You are listening to PopX Cast, where science fiction meets pop culture.
So we're going to talk first about what worked, what didn't work, what was confusing, and what was missing. Okay? So, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to kind of break it down. It's like, all right, so we know where this is. We know where it could be. We know where it should be. And what was like, I didn't get it. Yeah. So you got it? All right, so Austin, I want you to open us up this week and tell us what worked. What do you think worked in this film?
Okay, so if you guys have seen my review, then you know my thoughts on the movie as a whole. But I think a lot worked. A lot more than you would think if you go and look at the critic scores. Some people, I think, are being a little unfairly harsh to the movie because there's a lot there. There's a lot of potential for a fantastic film. And the biggest thing that I would say is the relationship between Tom Hardy, or Eddie Brock, and the symbiote. I loved that relationship.
Yeah.
I love their conversations. I love what they say to each other. When he, I don't want to say what he said, but when he calls him a certain word for taking the elevator, that scene, that it just sums it up for me how hilarious their relationship was. And when it first started out, you know, I'm like, am I on board for this tone? Because we have this super serious, like, evil character, yet the interaction between Eddie Brock and the symbiote at times was really kind of cheesy and cornball. But the more I watched it, the more I'm like, I really like what they're doing, and I like the direction that they're going. And I think with the box office and right now, see, now that and the voice, the sound of the voice, was that not just great? Now
Austin,
I think Tom Hardy.
what are you doing, Austin?
Joe,
I'm sorry.
Is that your actual voice?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just want to preach the fact that Venom worked only because Eddie Brock worked with Venom, if that makes sense. Their relationship was portrayed, I think, very comic accurate and different to a point that wasn't like offending to the fans of Venom, but brought new people on board. And another thing that I really liked, and then I'll let you give your points, Joe, but the humor in the movie, not just the relationship between the symbiote, but some of the lines that Tom Hardy had, I was literally sitting there cracking up. And even the parts of the movie that I don't know if it wanted you to laugh at, but you were laughing anyway, to me, that's entertainment.
Yeah.
Whether they meant for that to affect you that way or not, I like to judge a movie not just by the filmmaking, but how it makes me feel. And I was sitting there laughing at those parts. So those were the things that kind of worked for me, Joe. I want to hear your thoughts.
All right. So the things, you know, I was going in here. I really didn't know what to expect. I've only seen the, you know, I watched the trailer. Obviously, you know, you go to the theater and you sit down and it's one of the trailers that comes on before a movie. And so I went in, and one of the vibes I got, I think they've taken some notes from Deadpool.
Yeah.
I think they've taken some. I think they've taken some tones from Deadpool here, and it actually worked. And I think this movie, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, it would not have been near as good if Tom Hardy wasn't as cast in this role as Venom. I think Tom Hardy was 100% accurate. Man, he was just on this role. He is Eddie Brock, and just you know, his mannerisms going down the street, kind of scratching, and just, you know, I mean, he personifies Eddie Brock and Venom. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if you knew this, but he is also the voice of Venom as well. And so it's just amazing how he's everything. He's the one-stop pack. Literally, this is a movie with Tom Hardy and Venom. I mean, that's just, and it worked for me on all. The comedy was great. I know the scene you're talking about in the stairwell, and he's wanting to take the elevator. That was pretty daggone funny.
I laughed.
And I like the one where he's like,
"You're like a turd in the wind."
and when he gets in the vat with the lobsters, I saw a review and it compared him to Jim Carrey in Liar Liar.
It was awesome. Was it not awesome? He's just like, it's like a
but it worked.
Yeah, it's like, and he just kept I can imagine how this was shot, because it was shot from one perspective, and then they had to go back in and add the other perspective, which was Venom at the end of it. So it was really interesting, the concept. And for me, I think the shots worked. I think that Venom worked. The symbiote looked like it did from the comics. It was, this like alien, like, I don't know how you describe it, but elastic fibers coming out and just the tongue flailing. The teeth looked accurate. It even got the blessing of the creator himself, Mr. Todd McFarlane, who created Venom back in the 90s. So I think with all of that, and everything else that I think, the supporting acting cast was okay for me, but for me, what worked, the soundtrack was great. I thought the soundtrack was very accompanying to some of the scenes and the shots. I thought that was great. For me, that's what worked. Now, Mike is going to come in and join us as well here. He's going to share a couple of thoughts about what he thought worked, and then I'm going to let Mike transition into what he thought maybe didn't work as well. So, yeah.
I also thought real quick, I thought the cinematography was really good. I know that's going back to like, oh, Austin, you the filmmaking, whatever, but the filmmaking, like the looks of the shots, and I actually looked up who did the cinematography for this movie, and A Star Is Born came out this weekend. It's the same cinematographer for both films, and I knew there was something I was seeing there like that kind of looks similar. Same cinematographer, 2 movies in 1 weekend. That's pretty cool.
That's a good week for that dude.
Overall, well, going into it, I didn't have like high hopes for this, but once I kind of started getting into it, it actually was a lot better than I thought. Like you guys said, the special effects was amazing. The chemistry with Eddie Brock and the symbiote was very good. The comedy was great. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would.
Right, me too. Yeah, was there a moment in there where you were just like, oh, that is so cool? Was there just something that was just like jaw dropping for you?
Just kind of like the banter between the two of them. That where it just kind of started.
The voice in your head.
So that was a highlight for me. And to actually have my theater, I mean, there was a good amount of people. I went to the first show in noontime.
Yeah.
And it was about 30, 40 people, and the cheers from the crowd were
really
was pretty amazing. That from some of the stuff and even the laughter, like you would hear certain things and like only a few people would laugh, and then like everybody else would, because it was like you weren't sure if you were supposed to laugh at that or not.
It's what Austin said. Yeah. That's awesome, man. And so you loved the CGI, right? You obviously
the special effects, and I didn't realize that there was more than one symbiote. There was, I think, 4 in total.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. There's millions on this asteroid, and they're trying to all get to Earth to, So it's really interesting when you start unraveling that. There's this whole universe of Venom symbiotes that are trying to make their way to Earth, and Venom, of course, is the outcast of them all. So so now, Mike, from what was good, what were some of the things you thought that I don't want to necessarily weren't bad but didn't work?
I don't know if it's so much it didn't work. It just seemed like it took a while to get to the Venom character. I think the Eddie Brock story went longer than it should have. I think it was, they should have maybe cut it down a little bit, and then it should have been more of, him together with or as Venom. I think that's kind of the only thing that I can really think of off the top of my head.
Okay, so I thought there were a lot of things that did work for me in this movie, but there were even more things that didn't work, and unfortunately my movie critiquing and movie loving brain it couldn't stop eating at me while I was watching the film, like, oh, that's not working very well for me, and this part doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I think the biggest problem that I have with the film is there's a good movie in there.
Yes, right? There is a good movie in there.
I wanted to see the definitive Venom movie, or even a Venom movie that was a really good movie with the really good character. Unfortunately, we only got one of those two things. I thought the villain was... I didn't care. I think Riz Ahmed's a great actor, but I did not care about his villain whatsoever. Michelle Williams was wasted. She's an Oscar-nominated actress. She's fantastic, one of the best I've seen in 10 years, and she did nothing. She was there, and then she wasn't there, and then she comes in and makes out with Tom Hardy at one point, and that was odd. It was fine, but it was odd. There were just
that was she Venom though, man. That was she Venom. That was a she Venom.
It was she. It was just, it didn't work for me. The tone of that scene was so off from the rest of the movie. And that's one thing that I can say about this film. It was oddly edited. It looked good, but the editing for me, it was so fast paced. And I actually think, so you look at the runtime of the movie, I believe it's like 1 hour and 51 minutes, but the credits and the post-credit scenes are so long. The movie itself is only like 130, 135. I think that was kind of detrimental to this film because they squeezed so many things into that runtime, and it didn't flow well.
The credits were really long on this one. You were right.
They were, weren't they?
I was sitting there watching because, you know, it's a Marvel movie. You got to wait until the end.
You have to.
And, of course, I was right. There was some end stuff, but it was just like, I was sitting there, I was like, whoa, we're not even at the song credits yet. What the heck, man?
What are we doing?
Where are we going? All right, so this is the toilet butt wiper from the Australia group. This is the facilities crew that actually cleaned the urinals, and this who cares?
The janitors.
The janitors. Moving on here. So what didn't work for me? I thought there were some scenes that were kind of edited and kind of a little bit of a choppy feeling. The enemy was very predictable. I kind of knew right off the gate when Eddie was interviewing the owner of the Life Foundation. I was like, oh, I bet he's the enemy. And sure enough, he becomes Riot, and he becomes the enemy. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, that wasn't a plot twist. That was kind of like predictable. It's kind of like Ant-Man. You know, you can almost predict the enemy in Ant-Man, but Ant-Man is so funny and hilarious. You got to keep coming back for more. So. For me, the predictability, that's one of the things about superhero movies. We all know the stories going in because we're all comic book nerds at heart, and they want to stay true to the comics, and if they try to throw in a little curveball, sometimes it doesn't go very well. We've seen that happen many times in some of the previous Marvel comic movies. Well, Fantastic Four, for example. They try to create something and reinvent it, but you can't do that because there's lore. There's 70 years of comic book lore there that you can't erase. So...
Didn't it feel like a movie that belongs in the early 2000s? I just feel like we've moved past this kind of film, and I'm talking about the film, not the character.
Yeah,
but
it did kind of feel. It kind of felt like a Fantastic Four style, like not like the remake, the original one with Chris Evans. Yeah.
That's exactly what I compared it to. Yes, I think it feels like those movies,
and that's not necessarily bad. That's I don't know who's the director of the film.
This one was Ruben Fleischer. He did.
Did he do any of those films in the '90s, like those stuff?
He did Zombieland. That's what he did.
Well, Zombieland's not bad.
Yeah. I like Zombieland a lot, and you can actually get those vibes from this movie because it's a little bit funny, it's a little bit dark, and if it would have been R-rated, I think it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, agreed. I think if Sony would have like taken the bullet on this one, because you would have definitely catered to a particular crowd. You would have. You know, but for me, I think the bad part is the predictability of the enemy, of the villain, and just some of the shots were a little choppy in the storytelling. Now, Eddie's portion, the beginning of it, I actually liked the backstory of Eddie.
It was good.
I didn't really have any qualms or complaints with it because I was like, okay, we have to know who Eddie Brock is, his mannerisms before he gets infected. Because when he's infected, he's totally different than what he's already set up in the first 30 minutes of the film. So you understand there's a dynamic there. You have to let us know who Eddie Brock is as a human before Eddie Brock becomes Venom. And I think they did that very well. There was some things, like you said, there were some jokes that just I don't know. There was moments like I laughed and I didn't really know if it was funny or not, so I just kept laughing.
Right
But I'm not saying the jokes were bad or the scenes were bad. It was just,
something fell off.
Something fell off along the way.
Yeah. One of my qualms, real quick, with Eddie Brock and his backstory. It has nothing to do with the backstory. I didn't like that it took so long for Venom to show up, but that's fine.
Yeah.
He was a horrible reporter. How does this man have a job? Seriously, he's awful. First of all, he has a New York accent.
I think his girlfriend even called him out on it though.
He's a horrible reporter.
He sucks.
He's living in, where do they live? California? Is that where they
San
live?
Francisco.
He's going to be like, hey man, hey, what are you doing? Man?
Hey, yeah, you that guy down at the Life Foundation that got
You're
that down.
You're not going to hire a guy with that accent who's that bad at reporting to work in San Francisco. It's not realistic. So that was just like, it was just so off-putting to me. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But it's Tom Hardy, so I didn't care. He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah. So with all that said, I think it's all right. Now let's go into the confusing part. So what was good? What was bad? What was confusing about this, Austin?
One thing that I thought of was, and I know they mentioned it in the film, but the symbiote really, really loved Eddie Brock. And we get, I was a loser, you were a loser, we're both losers. Why are they losers? It never explored why the symbiote was a loser. It just kept saying, well, I'm a loser. And it went through so many, you're telling me the symbiotes kept attaching themselves to so many people, killing them, messing them up, whatever. And then it gets on Eddie and it's like, I'm hungry. That's about it. I mean, yes, it's eating my inside, but that's about it. And I guess it just stopped eating his insides, because at the end he's just like, yeah, we're good. We're here. And it's on me and we're okay. So
yeah.
That part for me was just like, it comes back to the runtime too. I need more. I need to know
and I
more.
think
We know
thinking
more
that
because we're comic lovers, but we need more.
I think in that 30 minutes of extra footage too, I think we might get a little bit more of that. Hopefully. Yeah. Also, I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if I've ever read this in the comic books, but there's a healing properties with Venom when Eddie broke his foot. I'm like, and he instantly healed. I can't remember off the top of my head because I haven't really dove into the world of Venomverse in a long time. I kind of been reading some other comics, but it was interesting to see that dynamic. I was like, oh, so he's a quick healer. As long as he's Venom, he can heal. So that was an interesting dynamic as well to kind of see that play out. Now, for me, did you wrap up on your confusing portion?
Okay, so the last thing that I have.
Okay, yeah.
Stupid. When Eddie scales the building to give his old boss the evidence, why didn't he just text it to him? Why don't you just text him the evidence? It's on your phone. Text him the evidence. Why did you have to scale the building, try to get through security? Text him the evidence. That's my last one. Go ahead.
Yeah, that didn't really make sense. He left the phone. He left his phone on the desk and was like, do the right thing.
He's like, I can't send you this picture, but I will bring you the phone with the picture on it. It's like the ultimate airdrop.
Was it really an airdrop or was it a symbiote drop? I don't know what it was. I don't know what. Yeah, you're totally right on. I did not. I mean, okay, yeah. We are talking about a modern time film. So for me, the confusing part definitely will be what you just said. That was a little weird. I think too, just all the other Venoms that were around as well was kind of confusing a little bit too, because as someone going into the Venomverse, I really wasn't familiar with Riot or She-Venom or Dog Venom, K9. I didn't know there was a lot of references.
In the container? How'd they get him in the container? They couldn't.
What was the extraction process on this comet? That was another. I was kind of confused by that, and what was the Life Foundation's owner? What was he trying to accomplish in bringing the symbiotes here? Was he trying to create?
Yes.
What was his goal? I mean, was he creating super soldiers, or was he trying to evolve the human race?
Yeah.
I mean, are we going into upgrade territory here? Or what are we doing here? Are we evolving? So awesome, Mike. So if you want to rate this on 1 to 10, here we go. And then I'm going to give up what on me and you, Austin. We're going to wrap up on ours as well.
Okay.
What are you going to give it, Mike?
I'm going to go with 7.
That's good.
7 out of 10
yeah. That's pretty close to mine.
It kind of turned out better than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Seeing the trailers, and unfortunately, I know very little about Venom, Venomverse, and all that stuff.
Right.
I was just looking forward to a good movie, and then I didn't get a whole lot out of the trailers, but once I went in there and I actually watched, I thoroughly enjoyed it better than I thought it would.
Nice. Definitely going to be a 4K purchase for me. I will say that much. I think it's going to be a definitely one for the library. Well, Mike, thanks so much, man. And let's give it up for this guy right here from Atlanta, Georgia. I love this dude so much. He makes PopX rock. And so Mike's got a 7, and I'm going to actually go with my part too. What was missing? I was missing Spider-Man.
Yes.
Can I just state the obvious here? You can't have Brock without Parker. You can't have Joker without Batman.
No.
Wasn't Tom Holland supposed to be You know,
There were rumors
the
about
focus-
that.
rumors about
There was
that.
there was rumors he was on set of Venom. Maybe that's in the 30 minutes that was cut.
Could be. Because he wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. He was supposed to be there as Peter Parker.
As
That's what I
Parker,
heard.
covering a story on something, but even that would have been a nice nod into the MCU verse, right? Because Sony has a contract agreement with MCU, right? I don't. And also, another thing was missing. Where is Venom's icon on his chest? His spider icon.
Yes. Oh,
Where? I mean, that
one.
that was kind of like, oh, wait, he's Venom, but he's not got the signature white spider on front and back. That just kind of was okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll roll with it. I can play that. So I think lack of incorporation into the MCU, because they could have really, this could have been a nice setup for Spider-Man 3. Don't you think that would have been a great setup? Like, you know, Spider-Man, because we know Far From Home is going to be dealing with Mysterio. We've seen that. And so Spider-Man 3 could wrap it up on Venomverse, you know? You know, with Carnage and you know, maybe Spider-Man having to, and Venom having to tag team to battle Carnage. You know, I mean, they could have really, the potential. Now, one thing I got to say I did like was the Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah, that was great.
That was
I like that a lot. I
So-
like that a lot.
So Austin, you go ahead and give your end, and then you and I are going to give our number, and we're going to wrap this thing up. We may give you a couple of Easter eggs as we roll out, but we don't want to go too late tonight. So Austin, what was missing for you?
Well, I completely agree with you on Spider-Man. When he lost the symbiote at the end, when it burnt wherever and it said "Bye, Eddie," I felt a little bit of emotion there. I'm like, wow, that's kind of heartbreaking. And then like 3 minutes later, it was back, and they just wrapped it up. And I'm like, I was missing the opportunity to mourn for their relationship and the symbiote that I had grown attached to throughout the entire movie. It just, that's another thing to me that just felt really, really rushed. And then I was missing the final scene in the movie was, first of all, in the trailer, and second of all, released as a clip online that I had watched. It's the scene where he's in the department store like a turd in the wind. That entire line, that entire scene was released online. Why would you release the last scene of the movie online? I was missing the mystery. Where was the mystery and the intrigue of the movie? And then we get Carnage, but we get Carnage in a post-credit scene, which, while I will admit that was a pretty cool post-credit scene,
Yeah.
barring the fact that he said his name. He's like, there's gonna be Carnage. It was still a cool. It's like when you say the name of the movie, and the movie is like The Dark Knight.
Yeah, it's a guy like Family Guy. Yeah, he said it. That is, yeah.
But I that scene was cool, but I was missing the presence of an actual villain. I get it, you're saving the big villain for the sequel.
Right.
But give me a good villain in the first movie. Give me a reason to come back for the sequel, right? And there were a lot of things missing from this movie, which is, for me, why it ended up being a disappointment. But there were also good things as well. So those, for me, were the big things that were missing.
Well, I'm going to give it a 6.8. So
Okay.
Mike's a 7. I'm a 6.8. What are you going to give it, Austin?
I'm the lowest of the bunch.
Okay.
I'm a 5.4.
I can respect it.
And I know it's hard. I save my 7s for movies that I really like. I save my 6s for movies that I think may not be the most entertaining film ever, but I still think it's a decent film.
Right.
I'm a 5.4 because I'm above the halfway point.
But you're
because
also you're also a college graduate film student as well. So
Yeah,
you
that's
do
true.
have
So-
that going on for you.
I'm very harsh on movies, and I've had people comment like, "Hey man, why don't you give this a 10 if you like it that much?" It's like, I like to save these things for movies that really just kind of envelop me. And I know a 5.4 sounds harsh, but there were good things. And if you see my score and you say, "Well, why don't you want me to see this movie?" I think everybody should check this movie out. There's a lot of things to love in there. The character's great, and it did get me excited to see Venom again. So it has that going for it.
Yeah.
So mine's a 5.4.
It's definitely rewatchable.
It is.
Definitely
It is.
rewatchable. So we got
Absolutely.
a 7 from Mike, a 6.8 from me, and we got a 5.4 from Mr. Austin Burke.
Thanks for listening. Please make sure to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/podcast
PopXCast and click the follow button to get our live stream notifications.